Frank, please. I didn't know where else to go.
I didn't plan to cry that night. I didn't know that in front of hundreds of people, my own son would erase me with one sentence and walk away like I never paid the price for his future. I planned to sit in the back row, clap quietly, and go home proud. That was it. I bought a cheap suit 3 weeks earlier. Nothing fancy, just clean, pressed, and new enough to not embarrass him. I practiced his name in my head the whole drive there, the way parents do, tasting it like a victory they didn't know how to say out loud. The auditorium was packed, parents holding phones too high, faculty pretending not to be tired. The air smelled like perfume, paper programs, and borrowed confidence. I stayed near the aisle, easy exit. I didn't want to get in anyone's way. Then I saw him, my son, straight-backed, confident, smiling like the world had finally agreed with him. For a second, I forgot where I was. I forgot how much I'd worked. I forgot how tired my hands used to be. I just thought, that's my boy. That was the moment I stood up. I didn't wave. I didn't call his name. I just stood, because something in me needed to acknowledge that this life he was stepping into had roots. He saw me. The smile didn't fade. It disappeared. He leaned toward the security guard near the stage and said something I couldn't hear. The guard looked at me, then back at him. Then my son said it louder, clear, calm, almost polite. I don't know this man. At first, I thought I misheard him. That happens when your brain refuses to accept what your ears already understand. The guard stepped closer. Sir, can you please remain seated? My son didn't look at me again. He stared straight ahead, jaw tight, hands folded, like this was just another formality he needed to get through before applause. People started watching. Not openly, just enough to make you feel small. The kind of watching that asks questions without asking questions. I wanted to explain, to say something simple like, I'm his father. But the word felt heavy in my mouth, like it had expired. I sat back down. The ceremony went on. Names were called, cheers echoed, parents cried. I clapped for kids I didn't know because clapping was easier than breathing. When it was over, I waited near the side exit. Not to confront him, just to see him up close once more. Proof that I hadn't imagined everything. He walked toward me slowly, like someone approaching a stranger they'd already decided to leave behind. He didn't yell. He didn't argue. He handed me an envelope. Read this, he said. Please. Then he turned and walked away. I didn't open it right away. I already knew it wasn't a thank you note. That night wasn't the end of anything. It was the beginning of a revenge story I never wanted to tell. About what happens when someone reaches the top by cutting off the hands that lifted them there. I stood alone in that hallway long after everyone left, holding an envelope that felt heavier than all the years I'd carried him on my back. And I still didn't know which hurt more, what he said, or how easily the world believed him. By the time my son left for college, I thought I'd done my job. Not perfectly. No parent ever does. But honestly. I taught him to show up on time, to look people in the eye, to say thank you when someone helped him. I taught him that money wasn't something you flexed with. It was something you respected. Or at least, I thought I did. Marcus always said he was on a scholarship, full ride, merit-based. He said it casually, like it was no big deal. And I let him. I nodded, asked about classes, pretended I didn't know every single dollar that kept him there had passed through my hands first. That was the deal I made with his mother before she died. Let him believe he earned it. Let him grow without entitlement. For a while, it worked. Then he met Lena. Lena came from a world I only knew from TV. Gated neighborhoods. Parents with titles before their names. Dinners where people talked about investments the way my coworkers talked about overtime shifts. The first time Marcus brought her home, I saw the shift happen in real time. He stood a little straighter, talked a little differently. And when she looked around our modest house, peeling paint, old couch, my work boots by the door, he laughed it off before she even asked. "It's temporary," he said. "Just where my dad lives." That word stuck. Lives. Not built, not paid for. Just lives. Let me ask you something. Have you ever watched someone you love slowly edit you out of their life, piece by piece, like you're an inconvenience instead of a foundation? You don't notice it all at once. It happens in small cuts, shorter phone calls, missed holidays, excuses that sound reasonable until you stack them side by side. By his third year, Marcus stopped calling unless he needed something. Advice, paperwork, a quiet favor he didn't want to explain to Lena's parents. He never asked how I was doing, never asked if I was tired, never asked if I needed anything. And I let it slide. Because that's what parents do when they think patience is love. The first time I felt truly invisible was at a restaurant near campus. Marcus invited me to lunch, last minute, squeezed between classes. Lena was there too. Her father joined us, wearing a watch that probably cost more than my truck. He asked Marcus about his plans, his future, his background. Marcus answered without looking at me. "My parents are simple people," he said. "Hard-working, but not really part of this world." I smiled, took a sip of water. No one noticed. That moment didn't explode. It didn't need to. Something quieter happened. Something worse. My son learned he could deny where he came from and still be accepted, still be admired, still be loved. And once a person realizes that, the next step comes easy. By the time graduation approached, Marcus had built an entire version of himself that didn't include me. A version where his success appeared self-made, clean, unburdened by a father who smelled like metal and work. I didn't know it then, but the envelope he would hand me later, the one that said, "Dad, I'm not your son," had already been written. Not on paper. It had been written every time he chose comfort over truth. Every time he accepted the benefits and denied the source. And I was still clapping for him, proud, unaware that my presence was already being treated like a liability. The invitation came by text. No call, no explanation. Just a PDF attached to a message that read, "Graduation details." I stared at my phone longer than I should have, waiting for something else to follow. A sentence, a joke, maybe even a "love you, Dad." Nothing came. I told myself not to read into it. Kids are busy. Medical school doesn't leave much room for sentiment. That's what reasonable fathers tell themselves when they don't want to admit the truth. I RSVP'd yes. I bought a suit a week later. First new one in over a decade. The salesman asked what the occasion was, and when I told him my son was graduating medical school, his face lit up. "You must be proud," he said. "I am," I answered. And I meant it. Even then. The morning of the ceremony, Marcus called. That alone made my heart jump. For half a second, I thought this was it. The moment he'd circle back, soften, remember who stood behind him all these years. but his voice was tight, careful. "Dad, listen, about tonight." That's when he said it. Not all at once. He broke it into polite pieces, like that made it kinder. The reception was upscale. Important people would be there. Doctors, investors, his girlfriend's family. Networking mattered. And maybe, just maybe, it would be better if I skipped the reception part.
"The ceremony is fine," he said quickly. Obviously. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I asked one question that told me everything. "What did you tell them about me?" Silence stretched on the line. Then he said it, the lie dressed up as convenience. A work emergency. The factory. A version of me that no longer existed, but was easy to dismiss. When the call ended, I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the empty chair across from me. The one his mother used to sit in. The one she sat in when she made me promise not to raise a son who thought he was better than the people who built his life. That promise echoed louder than Marcus's voice. The ceremony itself was beautiful. Big arena, proud families. When they called his name, I stood and clapped until my hands hurt. He never looked my way. He smiled toward the front row where his future was sitting. I left quietly. But I didn't go home. The reception was at a hotel downtown, the kind of place where everything shines a little too much. I showed up early, dressed properly, standing straight. When they asked for my name at the door, the woman scanned her list, frowned, and checked again. "I'm sorry, sir, you're not on the guest list." That word, sir, felt heavier than it should have. They let me inside anyway, just long enough for Marcus to see me. His face changed the moment our eyes met. Not surprise, not happiness, fear, embarrassment. "Dad, what are you doing here?" he whispered. "I came to congratulate my son." Behind him, his girlfriend froze. A few people nearby stopped talking. One of them, some older man with a glass of wine, tilted his head, curious. And that's when it hit me. I wasn't just unwanted. I was inconvenient. Standing there, in that room full of strangers who benefited from my absence, I finally understood what my son had decided long before this night. He didn't just want a different life. He wanted one that didn't owe me anything. I didn't plan to stay long. That was the lie I told myself as I stood there, just inside the ballroom, hands folded, spine straight, trying not to look like a mistake that wandered in by accident. The room buzzed with laughter and clinking glasses. People leaned in close to one another, trading names, titles, futures. Everyone belonged somewhere in that room. Except me. Marcus kept glancing over his shoulder, his smile stiff, his body angled away from me, like distance alone could fix the problem. His girlfriend stood beside him, one hand resting lightly on his arm. Not protective, not affectionate, possessive. "Dad," he said again, quieter this time. "You really shouldn't be here." "I won't stay," I replied. "I just wanted to say congratulations." Face to face. Behind him, a server tried to squeeze past with a tray of champagne. In the shuffle, one glass tipped. It didn't spill, not quite, but it clinked loudly against another, the sharp sound cutting through the chatter for half a second. A few heads turned. The server froze, embarrassed. Marcus froze too. For just a moment, everyone was looking at us. It wasn't funny, not really. But there was something almost poetic about it. How such a small accident could draw attention to something everyone else had been pretending not to see. "This is awkward," his girlfriend muttered under her breath.
That word again. Awkward. Like I was a social inconvenience, not a father. Marcus leaned closer. "Please," he whispered. "These people matter." I looked past him then, at the faces he wanted so badly to impress. Men and women who knew his resume, but not his story. Who admired his future without knowing who paid for it, who stood behind it, who stayed quiet so he could stand tall. "I know," I said. "That's why I'm leaving." Relief flashed across his face before he could stop it. That hurt more than anything else. Before I turned away, I reached into my jacket and pulled out an envelope. Plain, no ribbon, no drama. I held it out to him. "What's this?" he asked, wary. "A graduation gift." He hesitated, then took it, opened it right there. His eyes scanned the page once, then again. The color drained from his face so fast I thought he might faint. What is this?" His voice cracked.
"It's a notice," I said calmly.
"About the scholarship." He looked up at me, panic rising. "This isn't funny." "I'm not joking." The music kept playing. The room kept buzzing. But around us, time slowed. His girlfriend leaned in, reading over his shoulder, her confident expression collapsing into confusion.
You told us this was merit-based, she said sharply.
"It is," I replied. "He just never mentioned who funded it." Marcus grabbed my sleeve.
"Dad, wait!"
That's when security arrived. 2 men in dark suits. Polite. Firm. "Sir, we're going to have to ask you to leave." I nodded. Didn't resist. Didn't argue. As they escorted me out, I heard whispers start to ripple behind us. Curious. Concerned. The kind that don't fade easily. At the door, I glanced back once. Marcus was still standing there, envelope in hand, surrounded by people who suddenly had questions he couldn't answer. For the first time that night, he looked small. Outside, the night air was cool, quiet. I walked to my truck, sat behind the wheel, and let out a breath I felt like I'd been holding for years. I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't made a scene. But the truth had walked in wearing my name, and it didn't leave quietly with him. I slept better than I expected that night. Not because I felt good about what happened, but because for the first time in years, I wasn't pretending anymore.
The pretending had always been the hardest part.
Pretending it didn't hurt when my son avoided my calls. Pretending it was fine when he erased me from his story. Pretending silence was the same thing as peace.
Frank, please. I didn't know where else to go.
Morning came early. My phone started buzzing before the sun was fully up. Marcus. I let it ring. Then again. And again. By the time I made coffee, there were 7 missed calls and 3 voicemails. I didn't listen to them right away. I already knew what they would sound like. Panic dressed up as apology. When I finally did press play, his voice was nothing like the careful, polished tone he used the night before. "Dad, please call me back," he said. "There's been a mistake. The university sent an email. They're talking about repayment. That can't be right." The second message was shorter, faster. "Vanessa's parents are asking questions. I don't know what to tell them." The third one broke.
"They're saying the scholarship was revoked."
"Dad, I'll lose everything." I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the same scratch in the wood that had been there since Marcus was 10 years old. He dropped a toolbox on it once, looked up at me terrified, waiting to be yelled at. I hadn't yelled then either. I'd told him to be more careful and helped him clean it up. I wondered when he stopped believing I'd do the same now. By noon, the calls stopped, replaced by texts, long ones.
Apologies stacked on top of excuses. I didn't respond. That afternoon, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was the bank. Polite, direct. They confirmed what Marcus now knew for certain. His education line of credit had been called. 30 days, full repayment. That night there was a knock on my door. I opened it to find my son standing on the porch, eyes red, shoulders slumped. No designer jacket, no confident posture. Just a man who'd run out of places to hide.
She left, he said. She said I lied, that she can't trust me. I stepped aside and let him in. He sat where his mother used to sit, hands clasped together like he was trying to hold himself in one piece. They're talking about my residency offer too, he added quietly. They said this makes me look irresponsible. I nodded, not in judgment, in recognition. Dad, he said, voice shaking, I need you to fix this. There it was. The assumption. The habit. The belief that the man he'd denied would still be the one to clean up the mess. I looked at him for a long moment. Then I spoke. I can't fix something you're still pretending didn't break. He started crying then. Not quietly. Not politely. The kind of crying that comes when consequences finally catch up to choices. I was wrong, he said. I forgot who I was. I forgot what you and Mom taught me. I believed him, but belief wasn't enough anymore. This is the cost of pretending, I said gently. You don't just lose money, you lose trust. You lose people. He nodded, wiping his face. Tell me what to do. And for the first time in a long time, the question didn't feel like entitlement. It felt like the beginning of accountability. I didn't answer him right away. Marcus sat across from me, shoulders hunched, eyes swollen, waiting for instructions like they'd fall from the ceiling if he stayed quiet long enough. For most of his life, that's how it worked. Something went wrong, and someone else, me, his mother, the system, made it manageable again. But this wasn't a problem to manage. This was a lesson he'd avoided for years. There's one way forward, I said finally, and it's not easy. He nodded too fast. I'll do anything. That's what people always say when they're scared. I stood up and walked to the filing cabinet by the window, pulled out a folder I'd prepared long before he ever showed up at my door. Inside was a contract, simple, clear, impossible to misunderstand. You're going to work for a year at a free clinic, I told him. Full-time, not as a volunteer, as a doctor who shows up even when no one's watching. He blinked. A year? In the poorest part of the city, I continued. You'll live nearby. Small place. No shortcuts. No help from me beyond a roof and utilities. His mouth opened, then closed. And the money? The debt stays, I said. University, bank, all of it. You'll make payments, whatever you can afford, every month. He looked down at the contract, hands shaking. And if I do this? I met his eyes. Then I'll consider restoring what I took away. Not because you're my son, because you earned back the values you threw away. Silence filled the room again. Heavy, honest. What if I fail? He asked. Then you live with it, I said, like everyone else. He stared at the page for a long time. I could almost see the version of himself he'd been chasing, the status, the comfort, the approval, slipping further out of reach. And beneath that, something else started to surface. Fear, yes, but also clarity. He picked up the pen. Signing his name looked harder than passing any exam he'd ever taken. The first few months were rough. He called less, not because he didn't need help, but because he was finally learning how to stand without leaning on someone else. He told me about patients who paid with grocery bags instead of credit cards, about kids who flinched when adults raised their voices, about nights he went home exhausted, questioning why he'd ever wanted to be a doctor in the first place. Then, one night, his voice sounded different. "Dad," he said, "I helped a woman today who hadn't seen a doctor in 10 years. She hugged me like I'd saved her life." I smiled to myself. "That's the job." He paused. I think I forgot that." Months passed. Slowly he changed. Not dramatically, quietly, the way real growth happens. He stopped asking when the year would be over, started asking how he could do more. And that's when I knew the lesson was working. So let me ask you something, before this story goes any further. If you were in my place, if someone you loved denied you, erased you, benefited from your sacrifices without acknowledgement, would you have walked away? Or would you have done the harder thing and forced them to become better, even if it hurt both of you? There's no easy answer, but sometimes love isn't about forgiveness. Sometimes it's about making someone earn the right to it again.